Our sense of taste is one of the first to develop and generally the last to fade away. It's been proven that Alzheimer's patients can be reminded of childhood memories and memories long forgotten by the simple taste of a curry or a grilled cheese sandwich. It's really a survival mechanism. We have to remember to eat things that are good for us and not eat poison again. This has always been a really romantic notion to me. My sense of taste kicked off fairly young. I was always cooking and in a family that food was very important. We gardened, and my grandfather was from the old country and built his house right to the curb so the whole backyard could be a garden. And specifically, I remember a memory of going on a business trip with my dad. His business, not mine. Maybe I'm 13. And he has a meeting that night. And he tells me, you can go downstairs to the restaurant and eat it by yourself. And I'm thinking, this is okay. So there's 2 restaurants in the lobby. There's a standard sandwich, coffee shop type place. And then there's this fancy French, everyone in a bow tie, type spot. Well, I picked door number 2, and that's made a lot of the difference. So I walk in, stroll up to the maitre d'. Just imagine this. I'm 13 in an oversized blazer and a crooked tie that I borrowed from my dad's closet. Probably not even a shirt with a collar, like a t-shirt tie. This is a good look. And I walk up to the maitre d' and I say, table for 1. I often think about this, and I think, what would I do in my restaurant if this kid walked in off the street? I hope I do the same thing that they did. And they gave me a table, a wonderful table, right in the corner. And I proceeded to order everything tableside, or lit on fire, or hopefully both. I even had my first espresso. In this moment, I made a decision that this was what I was going to do with my life. I was going to make food and delighting people what I'm all about. It could have gone the other way. They could have been rude. The waiter could have dismissed me. I'm this kid. I'm going to order chicken fingers and a pop. I'm not going to order any wine, and I'm not going to know how to tip. But he didn't. I would have accepted that. I would have said, this is okay. And I would have gone on with my life and become a lawyer or an accountant or something sensible. But I didn't. They certainly didn't have chocolate milk in the kitchen, but somehow it appeared. And they were right about me not knowing how to tip, because 25% seemed okay. It was a simple, small act of service that became the formation of my identity, my future, and my path. So seemingly small acts of dignity and kindness can make the largest impact in people's lives and how they perceive their place and their self in that world. As a chef, I don't do anything really that impactful or important. I don't build bridges. I don't cure cancer. I'm not building robots. But I set the table for people's most poignant days in their lives. Their weddings, their birthdays, their graduations, and ultimately their funerals. There's a power and a purpose that comes from being that person in their lives. I create the opportunity for you to enjoy your family. There's a power and a purpose to that can't even be tangible. I was trained in the old school by chefs that were much more interested in breaking you down and authority than they were in nurturing and training. It was hot, ridiculing work. I was often bullied into working for free. My chef was an old French guy who made me iron his pants, wash his car, carry his knives, do everything, all with a resounding, yes, chef. Most of my days were halfway between a grueling military exercise and a prison sentence. And I would cry. I was so happy when I got to cut onions, because I could cry and no one knew why I was crying. I loved the work I was doing, but I hated the way it needed to be done. And I promised myself that one day, when I got to be the chef, I would do it differently. I found my difference about 11 years later in social enterprise. I love social enterprise. It's about connecting with people on a whole other level. Now business is simple. Any of the business people in the house can understand. You can break down business to a simple philosophy. It's about separating people from their money at the end of the day. But social enterprise is about more than that. Social enterprise has a greater purpose. It exists to raise money to support a community. It often employs people within that community, and it helps nurture and grow the community in the direction it needs to go. Now, I'm not against corporations. I'm not against for-profit companies. Without for-profit companies, we wouldn't have charity in the way that we know it now. Think of our sponsors here today. But what happens when a company really digs in and gets their hands dirty? I like the ones that dig in. The businesses and the social organizations that exist to both raise revenue, employ people, impact a community, and really, really, really see growth happen on a way that you wouldn't expect it. That's where the magic happens. I've been lucky enough to work with 7 phenomenal social enterprises over the year, be it from youth in the First Nations community in Alberta who are gang members, to working with the deaf and trying to build a cafe for the deaf. Very interesting. To working with underemployed immigrants and newcomers to Canada working in the hotel business. And there's a common thread between all these people. It's that they don't feel that they belong. And why would you engage with society on a level if you don't feel like you're part of society? Food is central to our lives, and it's central to the human experience. It started for me about teaching skills. It started me to teach someone how to make a sandwich. But it became about teaching people how to sustain and entertain others with a meal. It's all about making someone's day. So I want to talk about a couple of the social enterprises. I'll start with Fabarnak. We started a wonderful social enterprise just up the street at the 519 Church Street Community Center. And this was about building community around a table. Perfect concept. Every family meal is around a table. Every moment you have is around a table. We worked principally with trans youth and refugees working in a situation. Maybe they couldn't work before, maybe they were transitioning, maybe they were in a place that they didn't feel like they could get a regular job. So we gave them a place to be. We raised all this money, we did all this, all by selling expensive coffee and a funny little lunch plate called a square peg. Fabarnak came from the word tabernacle, which is a Quebecois swear word. Why not? We actually thought of it being, is tabernacle but fabulous. Why not? What that was all about is that the phrase of tabernacle was about rejecting what society said about people in Quebec at that time, and it was about rejecting the labels that they were going to put on you. So we thought good. When people told us that name's offensive, we said why. Why is a label offensive, and what does that mean to you? Really cool tactic, turn it around on them. We built the place like a fishbowl, all glass, so there was nowhere to hide. Especially, you couldn't hide the youth from the public, and the public couldn't hide from the youth. So we made it so that you had to interact. Trans people are so often put in the shadows, and we didn't want that to happen. We also got 4 stars from Toronto Life, Now Magazine, Toronto Star, and won the Ontario Restaurant Association's Restaurant of the Year Award by hijacking social media. What we didn't expect, and the intended impact was, we're going to train these youth, we're going to teach them how to do all this stuff. But we didn't expect that the park next door with the glass, that the drug dealers would leave and the people would come back to drink coffee and eat muffins. The other thing we didn't expect is that we'd have, trans youth, it's about a 50% suicide rate. In the years I was there, we never lost one. It gave them a place to transition, gave them a place to be themselves. It gave them a place to trade clothes with people going in the other direction from them. I remember that day and it still gives me goosebumps. But really, the best example that I think I connect to you with is Kids in the Hall Bistro. It was a program that, when I grew up in Edmonton, some real youth in trouble. First Nations, gang members, a lot of girls who had never been in a hotel that they weren't paid to be there. So in the time that I was there, we trained about 85, 90 youth, hard as nails, hard, hard, hard. My job was to teach them how to cook, how to serve, how to make coffee, how to connect with people. And it was a very interesting exercise working with people that had never interacted in a workplace. People are very defiant. I had knives pulled on me. I got stabbed a couple times. I certainly learned how to negotiate. And I found myself saying things like, you know when you go to a restaurant and they do this, or you know when you go out there and they do this, trying to connect with them. And I realized that a lot of them had never been out to a restaurant. How am I supposed to train you how to work in a restaurant if you've never experienced it? So we started something called Operation Dinner Bell. Operation Dinner Bell was a simple concept. We're going to take street kids out to fancy restaurants. Just let that sink in. That's a crazy, crazy idea. And when I brought this to the funder, saying, I want you to give me $10,000 to take street kids out for dinner to fancy restaurants. The only person who was crazier than me was him, because he said yes. The first restaurant we went to, we were thrown out. The youth were spitting spitballs and running around and having a food fight. And I realized I had made a very big mistake. That this was a big mistake. And what had I decided to do? 1 year later, I found myself sitting at the Rimrock Hotel, a 5-diamond resort in Banff, Alberta, with the same 12 youth we started on that dinner project with, and one of them leaned over and in the most polite voice ever said, I just love the texture of these scallops. I realized I'd created monsters. So 25 dinners later, this is where we got to. And the only thing better than that moment was when I attended that youth's graduation from nursing school a few years later. She told me that dinner at that hotel was the tipping point where she felt that she belonged in the world and she could contribute to it. I was changed. The youth were changed. The restaurants that we went to were changed. A lot of those restaurants gave jobs to our graduates afterwards. So simple kindness and hospitality it brings a whole new world to people's lives. Making that connection, that smile, that little bit of eye contact, that I'm at your service. It can open a whole new world. I guess what I want to leave you with is this. Go out there, do something, and be someone to someone that matters to you. Small things can make the most profound impact in people's lives. I think about that kid. Think about you being that kid walking to the Ritz and make that experience your life. Our actions and initiatives can be profitable and charitable at the same time. Everyone will tell you your crazy idea won't work, it doesn't make sense, and you're doing something wrong. That's when you know you're on the right track. It might not be what you expected. It may just be infinitely better. Thanks.